If there was one thing that Steve learned during his time in the New World, it was that no matter where you went, people seemed to always act the same. It didn't matter if you were in another dimension, alternate timeline. You could always tell who people were based off their actions. And even more so, you could always tell that things weren't as far apart as they might seem. When it came to politics, governing rules, things of that nature. In fact, for Steve, it became almost too similar. When you grow up reading about fairy tales, kingdoms, myths, magic, legends, things so far away, you tend to forget the realism in all of those stories. You focus so much on the fantastical that you forget that just as there is capability to be kind, there's also the capability to be cruel. For Steve, he saw that firsthand as he came across Loot Village once again. Just as he was preparing to leave and set off on the next leg of his adventure to level up with Raftalia and prepare for the next incoming incursion, he saw that Princess Mine and Motoyasu were still up to their same old tricks. That being in trying to form a tax on the village, extorting it for money. The village had only just barely survived, and even more so, it had come to his attention that none of the heroes were even going to make an attempt to save or help this village. So the fact that they thought that they could have the audacity to stroll on in, acting like conquering heroes who were owed so much, it was pretentious among anything else. I mean, sure, Steve had already had his growing distaste for the other heroes, but even still, this was just over the edge. Like, were they even trying to be heroes at this point? Or were they just naturally born to be jackasses? On top of everything else, in other developments, the Felo egg that they had actually hatched. It turned out to be a small Felo bird, but it grew rather quickly. Large enough that Raftalia and Steve could ride on her. Steve decided to name her Felo, just wanting to keep things simple and sweet. Of course, dealing with the likes of the spear hero would be easier said than done, and Princess Mine, always looking to stir the pot, decided that they would have a challenge, where the winner would decide how the village was run. It was going to be in the form of a dragon race. Or, using dragon riders to be more specifically, they would race 2 laps around the whole village. Of course, Steve decided to just go with Felo, and just to make sure that things were on the up and up, and much to Princess Mine's dismay, a group dressed in robe and shrouded in mystery would arrive. Steve had no idea who they were, but he was able to tell that they obviously had authority, because even for Princess Mine, she had to acquiesce to whatever they said. For Steve, being a soldier himself, and picking up on these kind of things, he was quickly able to deduce that whoever they were, or whoever they served, it had to be someone powerful. He doubted highly that the king would try to get in Princess Mine's affairs, especially if it meant that it was going to go against him. So who could it be? Who could have so much power that it even overshadows the king itself? This was something that most people wouldn't pay attention to. It's the little things that truly give away someone's true intentions. In just a short moment, Steve was able to deduce that there was someone in the kingdom, someone that had more power than even the king. Because, plain and simple, the king was the one that gave Mine the power and the privileges to do what she wanted. So the fact that another group could come along that could override her, it meant that they could override the king. But still, that left of wondering who it was. Oh well, he'd have to figure that out later. For now, he had a race to win. Of course, Princess Mine was not going to make it easy, having a few soldiers using various forms of magic to try to slow Steve down and trying to get him to lose the race. But still, it was nothing that he and Felo couldn't overcome, so getting the win wasn't too unexpected. The people of Loot Village were grateful that Steve had once again come to their defense, the shield hero himself. Of course, for Steve, it was all in a day's work. It wasn't anything too much for him to overcome. For Raftalia, though, she saw yet another side to her master. One of the many reasons why she had so much respect and admiration for him in the first place. Of course, following this, Steve would continue on in his adventures, which only got more and more stranger. For example, his Felo bird, he woke up the next day and she was gone. Well, she was still here, but she transformed into a girl, a small girl. Steve quickly got her some coverings as he tried to make sense of the situation. Somehow his Felo could transform from bird form to human form. And she had imprinted on Steve, viewing him as a big brother, similar to Raftalia. I guess I should make this very clear now. If there's anyone thinking that there's going to be any shipping between Steve and Raftalia or Steve and Felo, no, Steve's not that kind of guy. He views them as siblings, as people to watch over. At most, you'll get a father-daughter bond between any of the three, but it won't go any higher than that. And thankfully, Steve was careful enough to put that very much into perspective, so that nothing could get misconstrued, nothing could get misinterpreted, anything of that nature. You could say it was because of him being raised with the values that he always held, or it could be because he was a goody two-shoes. Take your pick. But in either case, both Raftalia and Felo viewed Steve as an older brother or a father figure, a little bit of the both. He was someone that they aspired to be, someone that they were confident in, someone they could rely on. And as such, they always want to do their best to impress him. Because like a child or a younger sibling, you always want to have those who are above you be proud of you, as they are the ones you look up and aspire to be. Steve was calm, caring. He had anger, but he always knew when to use it. He was always careful and cautious, kind, polite, sweet, despite everything that happened to him. For many, you could say he was a saint, but that wasn't true. Contrary to what people might think, Steve had his moments. He didn't always get everything right. He made mistakes from time to time. He wasn't always the most cautious, or he wasn't always the most sure. He had his faults. However, unlike most people in the world, he didn't let his faults define him. He didn't let his faults act like excuses for him to continue down the wrong path. No, when Steve made a mistake, he admitted to it. He corrected it. And those were the type of things that endured him to both Felo and Raftalia, respectively. It's what made him a true hero. As such, the three would continue in their adventures, journeying and traveling throughout the lands. As such, they came across many different towns, many different villages, meeting many different individuals, all of whom with their own stories, all of them with their own tragedies. And as Steve was slowly starting to learn, those tragedies didn't just come from nowhere. First, he had to deal with a village that was being overrun by plant monsters, and it was nothing that a good weed whacker couldn't solve. If you replace Weed Whacker with sword wielders and magic users and Felo, then they were able to get the job done. But there was also other disturbances. They came in the form of a kingdom who was being overrun by a poison that was bringing in deadly monster and disease. This was because of the works of our good friend, the sword hero. He had been hired to slay a dragon, and he managed to do so. The problem was, he treated it like it was a game. Thus, he left the body of a decaying dragon up in the mountains, whose body gave off a deadly cursed poison that was affecting the very land around it. Even more so, it ended up poisoning Raftalia in the process, And it affected even Steve, the monster's material. It caused something to awaken in him. Something very deadly. It was the rage shield. If there was one thing that Steve was always good at keeping bottled up, something he never allowed many to see, it was his anger. Make no mistake about it, Steve was not happy about his situation. No. And if you ever thought he was, then you are very much wrong. It wasn't that Steve didn't regret meeting Raftalia or Felo or the people he helped, but simply put, he never wanted to be in this situation. He never wanted to be in the situation to begin with that caused him to have to crash that giant ship into the Arctic. In a perfect world, he would be at home, his home, with Peggy. They would be dancing the night away, enjoying their life and the future that they could have had together. The war would have been brought to an end. The soldiers he fought with would have been brought back home, and he could lay to rest those that lost their lives fighting with him. In a perfect world, he was able to retire, die of old age, surrounded by his family and those whom he cared for. In a perfect world, that's what Steve would want, but unfortunately for Steve, he did not live in a perfect world. And it seemed no matter where you went in life, you would never find that kind of world. So no, Steve was not happy. He wasn't happy that his name was besmirched. He wasn't happy about being accused of something he didn't do. He wasn't happy that every time he walked into the kingdom, people looked at him funny. Women shielding away their children. Men looking like they wanted him dead. For something he did not do. And what was worse was that no matter what happened next, he would never get the answer that satisfied him. He didn't bother to ask Princess Mine why she did what she did. There was no point. It was just her nature. It was who she was deep down. Now, of course, Steve was all about believing that people could change, but still, when you accuse someone of assault in that manner, and you have no remorse, how could you ever really change? And even more so, the king who had a vendetta against him. For what? What had he done wrong? He rewarded the poor behavior of the other heroes, and yet it seemed like every good deed he did was specifically used to be punished against him. It was like no one seemed to care about what truly mattered, the waves of catastrophe. While everyone else was just going along, playing pretend, playing hero, Steve had to live it. He had been living it for almost all of his life. And yet, even still, yes, he had a lot of rage pent up inside of him. A lot of rage that he kept boiled deep down inside. And for a split second, the rage shield tapped into it. It brought all of that anger out, all of that hatred, all of that rage. And the sad part is, he kind of liked it. Just to dip into that power. To feel everything he felt being expressed through power. But at the same time, he also saw that giving in to one's own rage could lead to a detrimental outcome. Raftalia was injured. He had to focus on slaying this monstrous corpse of a dragon, disposing of it once and for all, and helping these villagers. Thankfully, they were able to do so, but still Raftalia was wounded, and it was something that only holy water could cure, but Steve would have to go to the church that was back at the kingdom. Begrudgingly, they would return. On the way, though, they would meet someone, a young girl, around 15, 16 years old. Her name was Melty. She was very respectful. She was playing with some Felo birds. When she came across Felo, she thought she was absolutely adorable. On top of that, Felo had made a friend. Steve was cordial and respectful to the girl, and she traveled with them back to the kingdom. There, Steve was able to get the holy water that he needed, and he got a chance to meet the Pope of the church. Of course, for Steve, he was a churchgoer, a God-fearing man. At first, he thought that maybe this church would find some solace, only to quickly realize it was the Three Heroes Church. For Steve, there was only one God, and even if he found out there wasn't, he'd be damned if he was going to worship those other three. So he simply took what he needed and he left. It was no big deal for him. While he was making his way through, a young knight would come rushing to his side. Steve and Raftalia would stop, as the boy didn't have any malice. "Shield hero, thank goodness I found you." Can I help you?" "It's the spear hero. Please, we need your help. He's out of control." "Motoyasu? What's he doing this time?" Well, it didn't take long for him to find out, because when Motoyasu saw him, he came charging in, swiping away with his spear once again. Steve couldn't believe it. Had the boy not learned anything? Was he just this hard-headed? Was it this hard to have some humility? Like, damn! Steve was quickly able to kick him back down to his butt. Motoyasu wasn't backing down. "You made that poor girl a slave." "I don't have slaves. What's your problem?" "That girl with the angel wings. She's the most beautiful thing I've ever saw. How could you enslave a girl like that?" "I challenge you." "Are you serious? Do you see where we're at right now? You're gonna try to fight me in front of a crowded town? What about the people that get hurt?" "No, I'm not going to fight you." "Oh, yes, you are." Oh, great. Look what the bitch dragged in. Princess Mine, using her power once again, was now sanctioning a duel. Of course, there were people there who didn't want the fight. They didn't really care for Princess Mine either, or the spear hero. They were against it, and Princess Mine didn't like that insubordination. She had her soldiers ready to draw their swords. Steve stood to defend the villagers, along with Aki respectively. "You call yourself a knight of Melremark, you wimp. And yet not only do you fight with the devil of the shield, but you stand against your princess?" The other soldiers that fought with Mine would say in unison. "That's just Aki. The boy has no spine. He's a cowardly wimp and a traitor. Know your place, boy. Stand down or be cut down." "You got the wrong idea. These people, they're innocent. You have no reason to drag them into this." "Are you disregarding the orders of the princess? Know your place, boy." Steve stood to the boy's side. He looked to him. Kind of reminded him of himself. He could see that the boy's knees were shaking. There was sweat running down his brow, but even still, he was standing firm. Steve liked that. However, before things could get any further, though, Melty would arrive. "There won't be any fighting here, sister." "And what are you doing here?" "I could say the same to you. It seems while Mother is gone, you have been causing trouble, no less. It's a pity. You seem to always be a proprietor of finding it." "Princess?" "Yes, I am Princess Melty of Melremark. And I am Mine's younger sister." Of course, this was definitely news to Steve, but when Melty gave an order, even the soldiers who had such high spirits would stand down, with the spear hero being given a rude awakening as Felo would arrive, and he would learn that Felo was actually the filial that he had called a fat ass. And, well, she didn't take too kindly to that, and she didn't like the spear guy. He was always so mean to Big Brother Steve, always picking on him, always starting fights, always being annoying, and worst of all, He called her fat. So she kicked him in the crotch. Wasn't the most honorable of moves, but Steve wasn't going to argue against it. Still, though, that left the matter of Princess Melty. They would head back to the blacksmith shop. Earnhardt, much to his credit, had basically allowed his shop to become a place of operation for Steve. And for Steve, he had to learn what was going on. "Thank you, Shield Hero. It's pleased to meet you. I'm sorry for not introducing myself before. I didn't know who you truly were." "It's all right. Safe to say, you're a princess here?" "Indeed, I am. I am Princess Melty of Melremark." "Ah, so you're also related to mine and the old man." "Yes, for better or for worse. I've actually been trying to clean up behind their messes while Mother's been away." "Your mother? You're talking about the Queen?" "Yes. While she's been gone, the king has been acting in her stead." "Huh. So I guess things are different here, huh? The Queen's the one that's higher up over the king?" "Oh, yes. It was my father who married into the royal family. While he is powerful and the king, it is the Queen who is the true matriarch and has final say in the matter." "Well, you learn something new every day." Before Melty could explain any further, though, she would be called in by a couple of knights. Unfortunately, she had to leave, but she hoped that she could meet with them again. For Steve, right now he had to focus on getting ready for the next wave. He had managed to take Felo and Raftalia back to the church, hoping to use the Dragon Hourglass to determine the next time of the wave and to get their upgrades. Unfortunately, though, they were denied. Steve would learn that the next best thing he could do was find Siltvelt. That would be a country that was friendly to the Shield Hero and would allow him and his party to upgrade. Of course, though, it was a whiles away, and they wouldn't be able to get to it in time before the next wave came. Also, while going out to eat, he would have the misfortunes of running into Ren and Itsuki, the two respectively having their missions being canceled, and they learned it was all because of Steve. Of course, they wanted to give him a talking to, believing that he was up to no good once again, but Steve made it very clear to the boys that the only reason why their missions got canceled was because they were acting like a bunch of idiots. For Itsuki, he led a revolt in a country to the north, taking out the old ruler with a band of revolutionaries. The only problem was that the revolutionaries were worser than the king, and they left the kingdom even worse than how it originally was. And then there was Ren, the famed sword hero who slayed that dragon and left its carcass that ended up infecting a town with an epidemic. Of course, much to their dismay, for all the good they had done, they had only caused more trouble and headache. Steve tried to admonish them. He still thought they had potential, at least. I mean, they had these powers, they should learn how to use them properly to be better heroes. But it was as if they just didn't seem to care. Of course, there was nothing that he could do about it. For now, he had to set his sights on the next wave. However, help would come from the most unlikeliest of sources. That boy named Aki, a knight of Melremark, along with 2 other knights and 2 other mages. Aki and his group all came from the Loot village, the one that was saved by Steve. Their families were all saved by Steve. "Please, Shield Hero," Aki spoke for his group. "Allow us to help you in your next fight against the waves, as a way of repaying you for all that you've done for us. Please." You all want to fight with me?" Steve would ask. "Yes, we would like to very much." You know, from what I've been able to tell, Other people aren't going to like you all being associated with the likes of us. Are you really sure you want to? I mean, I appreciate the sentiment, but it's not about sentiment. The rumors, as unpleasant as they might be, there's no proof in any of them. I cannot speak for what you have or haven't done. That I do not know. All I can say is that from your actions, my family, our families were saved because of you. No one else. When the other heroes refused, you stood up for our home. That's why we want to fight with you. So please, let us lend you our power. Gotta say, kid, you got a big heart. I like that. If you guys want to fight with us, then go right on ahead. I won't stop you. And I'll say, you're exactly the type of people I will gladly fight with. Aki and his team were happy, being accepted by the Shield Hero. Together, Steve and his newfound allies would prepare, as the next wave was about to begin. This concludes The Rising of the Shield Hero, The Man Out of Time. What if Captain America was a Shield Hero? Season 1, Part 3. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that's to come out now and in the future. And stay tuned tomorrow morning as we continue with What If Captain America Was the Shield Hero, Season 1, Part 4. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.